effortless action is the outcome of sustained effort, discipline, consistency, showing up for yourself, delaying gratification, and making difficult choices. Effortless action cannot be the starting point of your journey. This idea that whatever is authentic for you, whatever is right for you, should feel effortless is ridiculous. But if you have been hoping for effortless action, if you have been hoping for that free-flowing spontaneity, let me read you something, maybe it will resonate with you. Fullest expressiveness of uniqueness, or full spontaneity, is a guarantee of honest expression of the nature and style of the freely functioning organism and of its uniqueness. Both words, spontaneity and expressiveness, imply honesty, naturalness, truthfulness, because they also imply a non-instrumental nature of the behavior, a lack of willful trying. Maybe some of you like this. A lack of willful trying, a lack of effortful striving and straining, a lack of interference with the flow of the impulses and the free radiating expression of the deep person. So if you are someone who subscribes to this idea that life should feel effortless and that whatever is authentic for you should feel easy and effortless, and there should be no resistance, no struggling and striving, then you probably love this idea. A lack of willful trying, lack of effortful striving and straining, a lack of interference with the flow of the impulses and the free radiating expression of the deep person. Well, this is Abraham Maslow in the Farther Reaches of Human Nature, listing the last aspect or component of the peak experience. Peak experience, I mean, the name itself, peak, means it's not something that is sustained or not something that can be sustained throughout one's life. Those are some of the highest moments of human life that are accessible to every human, let's be clear. But for no human are they accessible at all times. So once again, this is the last in the list of aspects of the peak experience that Maslow is describing, while some of the first ones are focus, making the difficult growth choice, daily actions, looking at it as a journey. So to make this easier to understand, it takes effort to become the person who can experience what he is describing here. It takes effort to become the person who can experience more frequently this full spontaneity. But for you to think that at the beginning of your journey, or on the intermediate level of your journey, that it should just feel easy at all times, it should just be effortless, is unrealistic, and to be honest, it's ridiculous. Because people who experience or who have these peak experiences more often than others are what Maslow called self-actualizers or transcenders. And those are the people who have invested a ton of effort into activities that are relevant for them personally, as in their interests and passions, and also have invested a ton of effort in difficult choices that every human must make, such as delaying gratification, such as choosing to do the right thing when it's easier to do the wrong thing. So once again, it's building up to become the person who can experience effortless action, who can experience this full spontaneity where there is no willful trying. Some of the greatest writers of all time speak of how difficult it is to write most of the time, and then they are rewarded with moments where the words just flow. Here is another person. I said the word flow. Let's look at another person who spoke about this. It's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the man who coined and popularized the term flow state. Even he ridicules this idea of it should all feel effortless. He says, when people first learn about the flow experience, they sometimes assume the lack of that lack of self-consciousness has something to do with a passive obliteration of the self, a, in quotations, going with the flow, Southern California style. Maybe today, in 2025, we can say not only Southern California style, but Bali style, or Costa Rica ayahuasca trip style. This is what Csikszentmihalyi is talking about, this idea that when he says obliteration of the self, what does that imply? Obliteration of the self implies the same thing that Maslow talks about here, that lack of willful striving. That's the peak of human existence that you reach at certain moments. That's not how you can live your life. And when he says Southern California style, some of you understand the cultural reference. It's the hippies and neo-hippies. I'm not trying to judge the whole hippie community, but let's now use that word. Is the hippies and neo-hippies and new age hippies who propose the idea that life can and should at all moments feel like in those peak experiences, and that we should not be putting in the effort, that we should not be trying, striving, struggling, that life can be completely devoid of struggle and striving. But their philosophy, or the twist that they put on that philosophy, the foundations are or have been built or were built by people who have put in insane amounts of superhuman effort to meditate for decades and to resist temptations for decades. So the people who have provided the foundations for what would later be this cult of going with the flow, the people who provided foundations for that, they would be ashamed of the idea that life is all fun and going with the flow, because those people were struggling, those people were striving to reach a higher level of consciousness through meditative practices, through abstinence, through a very, very different type of life compared to this going with the flow Southern California or Bali style. What do these people tell us? What does Abraham Maslow try to tell us? What does Csikszentmihalyi try to tell us? You have to become the person who gets rewarded with moments of effortless action, of full spontaneity, of expression of your deepest nature without you even trying to do so. Whether you like it or not, that's not the default state of human beings. Effortless expression of your deepest nature. You have to earn it. And if you believe it is the default state of human beings, then you have to accept that somewhere on our timeline, we got so sidetracked from that deepest nature, from that default state. We got so sidetracked that now you have to put in immense effort to go back to that default state. So either way you look at it, effort is needed, consistency is needed, discipline is needed, delaying gratification is needed, training your focus and attention is needed, because I spoke about it in the previous video, if you're interested in it. Effort is needed to, training your attention and focus is needed for you to attain those moments where you are fully immersed in something or into something. Both Maslow and Csikszentmihalyi talk about it. And here what Csikszentmihalyi says, people assume that a lack of self-consciousness has something to do with a passive obliteration of the self. I also provide more context for that difference in the previous video, where the lack of self-consciousness, we explain that it is the lack of self-judgment. It is the lack of critical and judging self-awareness. So lack of self-consciousness doesn't mean obliteration of the self. In fact, both flow state and peak experience leave us later with a stronger sense of self. However, we argue that that stronger sense of self is actually what is needed if you are someone who subscribes to Eastern traditions, more specifically Buddhism, and you think that eventually there should be that obliteration of the self. That still is achieved through firstly strengthening the self so that you can become the person who does these things that take you higher and higher on your development journey. What I would end with is this. One great anecdote by Maslow. He says that self-actualization journey sometimes consists of a piano player just practicing one movement of one finger. That's how boring and that's how mundane this beautiful journey of self-actualization can look. Practicing a movement of one finger. Why am I saying this? These mundane, boring, and unimpressive activities, these are what is needed for that cool state of free, effortless expression. Because we all know that that's what seems cool. What seems cool is I don't have to try. What seems cool is anything that is authentic about me will be freely expressed without me struggling to express it. Well, the people that you see being able to do so, in their rooms or behind the curtain, they have been practicing one finger movement. So that's my challenge to you. Face and accept and embrace those activities, those tasks that are boring, mundane, difficult, not cool, unimpressive, but actually contribute to your journey. Actually contribute to you becoming the person who experiences the flow state more frequently, who reaches the peak experience more frequently, and by doing so achieves that full spontaneity and effortless action more frequently. Thank you.